Hey y'all, I'm just starting off, there we go. Stuff almost fell apart over here for a second, but I got it. So happy Thursday. We're back for another week. Happy October all over again. Happy 8th hour of the evening. What's up? Hey y'all. Can you tell I missed y'all? I missed y'all from last week. I did. Stuff be happening, life just be going on. And I get to miss people. I'm a misser, if that makes sense. It's fine. If it doesn't, it's okay too. Anywho, we are back with our special guest, Jasmine. Hey, Jasmine. Hey.
Thanks for having me again.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming back. And for all of you out there, welcome back to another episode of the B Mix right here on BeExposedRadio.com. You already know who Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time are for everyone, the unseen, the unheard, the forgotten, the overlooked, whether it be the forgotten part of you or for the person that does not belong anywhere, me, B. So again, welcome or welcome back.
And me.
Okay. Right. Look, literally all of us. Okay. That's the thing. That is the whole point that I want people to get. It's all of us. Like, I don't care what your socioeconomic status is. I don't care what your level of education is. Like, we legit somewhere, you and somebody that you think is completely at the opposite end of the world, either physically or mentally, spiritually, or whatever, you and someone else share something alike. And it very well could be the fact that you feel as though you are overlooked. You feel as though that you are unheard. You feel as though you are misinterpreted. You feel as though that you are just unseen. Like, that's like, it seems so minor, but it's such a major thing. Like, something that you could really connect with somebody. Like, girl, you feel like they don't hear you, they don't get you either. Me too. Like, just easy connection. And that's what I want people to get eventually. Like, yo, we are just connected. We just be connecting, which I love. And so real quick, y'all, I'm not quick, like as in it's not important, but just I want to do this before we get into our conversation and topic for tonight, because I'm excited about it, even though it's a somewhat of a heavy topic and serious topic, but awareness is always to be taken seriously. But before we get into it, I want to share, because I would be remiss not to mention our moment of a history of racial injustice from last week as well as this week, because I didn't get around to sharing it last week. So I'm gonna jump right into both of them. Last week, excuse me, in 1963, state troopers joined local deputies in beating and shocking with cattle prods more than 350 African Americans as they wait in line to register to vote at the county courthouse in Selma, Alabama. Just to register to vote, they were shocked and beaten with cattle prods. Sheesh. So this moment for this week, for this date, again, according to the calendar that I have from Equal Justice Initiative, says in 1982, declaring drugs a threat to national security, President Ronald Reagan doubles down on the Nixon administration's war on drugs and calls for new laws to impose prison sentences for drug use. Leave that right there for y'all, because y'all know that's a lot we could talk about.
Read that one more time, Benia.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me let that sink in.
Right. That's what I wanted to do. It felt heavy on my chest when I read it out loud. In 1982, declaring drugs a threat to national security, President Ronald Reagan doubles down on the Nixon administration's war on drugs and calls for new laws to impose prison sentences for drug use. That absolutely affected our community, but just We can definitely delve into that another day, because that's why it's a moment. It's a little food for thought, something for us to kind of you know, get some convo around.
I used to watch the show, well, I still do, but I need to catch up. But I used to watch the show Snowfall. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But basically, it was during that time where the war on drugs, it highlights the war on drugs through the white community, the government, and the Black community. So basically, the government was paying for drugs to be brought into the country. And basically, cocaine was popular during that time amongst the elites. But the Blacks figured out a way to basically make more money on it and created crack from the cocaine.
Okay.
And started to sell crack, which is what caused the crack epidemic. But also, they focused on arresting or murdering the people in the Black community more than anyone else.
Now that part, see, I knew that, but see, that's interesting to know. I definitely didn't know that part. I might actually look into this show, just because I ain't gonna lie. The only reason I even know about it is because on the dating app, like quite a few people I've seen, like they say like, oh, what's your 3 favorite shows or some prompt they have you like answer that can be on your profile. And I've seen quite a few people say Snowball. I'm like, what is this? Literally thinking about some show about Alaska or something. And but okay. That's it. I didn't know that. See, that's what I like to know. It's like just something else that I'm gonna get from it beside the obvious. Like, okay, a deep message like that. I really would not have known that. I knew
the show is a very deep show.
It's a very what?
It's a very deep show.
Okay.
I like it a lot. I'm sorry, I gotta turn off my Uber at 6.
That's okay. That's all right.
All right. But yeah, it takes place in the 70s.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, right. So around the same time.
Literally the Nixon. Well, that the whole focus in the show was the war on drugs. And so
yeah, that's the time frame. Okay, I really might look into that show. I'm not even gonna lie. That's pretty interesting. Somebody's drag racing. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Sorry. It was annoying. It was like all the way. I could hear it at the very end of my block, which is quite a few ways down. And they then brought themselves up. Like, what took y'all so long to get up here? All that noise. Moving on. But yeah, that's, like I said, that's interesting. Thank you for that. And I knew just enough to be able, like, for that moment of racial injustice, like to hit in a way, because it's interesting that in that moment, it mentions nothing about, like we know, like what they crack down. It says they crack down, but it doesn't say that like they were arresting and, like you said, killing more, of us and tying it with that. So I appreciate that. I might actually really look into that show. I'm not even gonna lie. I've been thinking about it, but I didn't have a real reason because I didn't even look into it to find out if I wanted to actually watch it. But I appreciate it. So y'all, tonight we are getting into, and again, hi Lyra, thank you, missed you. We're getting into the fact that October is, and I almost gave it away earlier. I don't know if y'all caught that, like as I was doing the intro, like happy October, happy. I almost gave it away then, but I wanted to wait until we got to it so we could get right into the topic tonight, which is the fact that October, along with a few other like movements I know, October is dedicated to, it's considered, or what's the word I'm looking for? I can't find it. Y'all forgive me. I've had a day. I'm really not even trying to go into that. But, all right. My brain has to shift of even caring to find the word that I'm looking for. It's okay. But anywho, so the month of October is dedicated to domestic violence awareness and prevention. So it's National Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. And so I don't know if all of you that may be viewing now, or for those of you that may even catch the replay, it'll behoove you, or really it just to jog your memory that as toward the end of last week's show, we started to touch on not just, but abuse domestic violence abuse. And not to put on blast now, but Jasmine began to just share like her experience. And so it peeled right into and it was right in alignment with the topic for this week's show. I don't even know if y'all might remember that I said like, yep, next week we're going to get right on into that because it's right there, just cooked right up into it. And would definitely want to pay homage to such a movement because awareness overall, I don't really care what the movement is. Awareness is a big part of it. Y'all know here on the B-Mix, we talk about awareness a lot because that's the thing. And we have to become more aware of self. You know, we talk a lot about self here. That's why we got the self-love, self-care queen in the building. So
I love that.
yeah, I'm just saying. You're welcome. Look, use it. But you should. That's legit how I refer to you. I'll be like, yeah, my friend, she's a self-care, self-love queen, and she does shirts, she does it. Like that's always in my spiel. Oh, you're welcome. Listen, you got to know, man. I'll be pushing it out here. But yeah, so just to really get into it. And so I want to open up this part of just us delving into the topic, open up this segment with stating, because it aligns with Jasmine and I just had a conversation a couple days ago. Not too long ago, a couple days ago. And so, right? It was recent, right? Okay. Okay. That's because I'm like, I know it wasn't all the way last week. It was like recent. Okay. Yeah. That shows you. Today alone was long. So I feel like today was a week. But so I wanted to open up this segment of the show with the fact that as we talk about and even share, as you know, Jasmine, feel absolutely free and open. Anyone that is listening, feel absolutely open and free to comment, like, share, of course, the show overall, the B-Mix, and this particular episode. Also feel free to call or text in at 443-642-9403. Again, 443-642-9403 with your experience. If you want to, if you feel moved, to share your experience, to, I don't know, delve into something you kind of want to dissect something about, whether if it's a current experience, a past experience, that maybe you see signs, whatever the case may be, anything that comes up tonight, absolutely feel free to talk about. And so, but I want to say with any experiences that may be addressed or mentioned or even just tapped around, I want to be clear that we have to keep an open mind that domestic violence is that. Like it's, instead of, we can't say just women abuse, abuse on women, that falls under, that umbrella. But to be very clear that there are quite a few male victims of domestic violence. And I guess as we continue to talk, and so we'll get more into that and like what that means. But one example to share is that when I interned for a law firm, I saw so many cases of like men like filing charge or just as the victim of domestic violence. And of course, and I shared this when we were talking, Jasmine, I was like, even at that moment, me just sharing it a couple of days ago, was like, of course, my first brain, wants to be like snicker at it. But even me repeating and saying it now, because I haven't thought about it in a while, me repeating now is like, ain't nothing funny, but like, it's crazy to me. Like it's wild, but we have to consider that. So just wanted to like set that atmosphere for everyone watching and listening, and that may comment or share the show, or like I said, call in or text or whatever. Please try not to discount. We try not to do that here anyway, but do not discount anyone else's experience. And that's across genders. So, I mean, LGBTQI, I just heard, I'm trying to make sure I keep up with any letters and any addition or anything. Hi, Shola! Happy birthday, Shola! Hey. That's my sister, y'all. It's her birthday, y'all. Heart, man. She just checked in, y'all. I had to give her a shout out, like a legit shout.
Libra gang.
Yes, I'm surrounded by Libras, and I appreciate them. Yesterday was Jade's birthday. Shout out to Jade. Happy belated
birthday, Jade.
Child, these Libras, man, y'all all around me, and I appreciate y'all. That's the thing. I do appreciate y'all. Y'all definitely balance me out. See what I did there? Get it? All right.
Yes. That's what we do.
Y'all do, man. Y'all do. Like
we do it better for other people than ourselves, though.
Look, isn't that us all though?
Huh?
That's all of us. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Look, y'all don't have to work that by yourselves.
That's true. That's true. That's very true.
Saying, but yeah. So okay. So Jasmine, first thought, domestic violence. What comes to mind?
I think I want to talk about what I always thought it was before, and then when experiencing it, discovered.
Okay.
But for me, I always thought that, like, you know, in movies they really kind of dramatize it a bit, and they make it seem like you're literally getting your butt whipped on like a regular basis. And while that may be some people's experience, it doesn't necessarily take that for it to be considered it. And so, you know, domestic violence doesn't just have to be physical. That's just it could be mental. Well, can it?
It is mental. Yes.
Yeah, mental and physical. And so more of it is mental than physical, in fact. So then when you actually experience it, it's kind of a mind F, because you're like, is this, especially in the earlier signs, like certain things happen and you question it, or you wonder like, I don't know. And so as you keep going, and then you realize when you reflect back in the beginning, it's like, oh, these were warning signs. And also, I think that something I shared with you the other day, I think that not all, now some people who are abusive may in fact just be abusive across the board. But I do think that some toxic relationships can transition into an abusive relationship. And you know, this whole year, I guess, in the pandemic, everybody's been addressing different toxic behaviors, but basically those toxic behaviors can trigger a person to respond toxically. And so, yeah, they may not necessarily, or you may not necessarily be a toxic person, but when involved with a person, well, everybody has toxic traits. Let me say that. Everybody has toxic traits, and based on if you get into a relationship with a person who is more triggering than, you know, someone else, that can cause a back and forth, like tug of war. Love you too. It's like a tug of war, really, of like, it's literally like being in battle, you know, like within the relationship. Like there's good times, but it's always a thing where it's like, you never are really able to rest. And aside from just like being hit, also, being hit is not the only example. Some people choke, some people do a number of things. I don't want to speak on too many things because all of those things aren't my experience. But in my particular experience, the person I was involved with would choke me. And so they never hit me, actually. And so it was a thing where it was like, I don't know what this is, but is it abuse? I don't know, because it happened once and then it didn't happen again for a while. And then it didn't happen again for a while. And so it was very like spaced out. And most of those times it occurred within heated arguments or debates about different things. Some of it was infidelity, some of it was, you know, financial struggles. And those were the main core two reasons for me. And one of the things that I actually saw in the news not too long ago was domestic violence increases during pregnancy. And so people wouldn't think that but because, you know, the person is actually carrying their child. And I actually forgot to tell you this the other day when we were on the phone, but they interviewed somebody, I want to say from like House of Ruth or something. And they were like, basically most men or people in general who are physically abusive within relationships become so stressed and overwhelmed that they are not able to handle whatever it is that is bothering them, and they take it out on the person that they're involved with. And so if they're having a baby on the way and now thinking of all the things that they have to prepare for, it may not be at a place where they feel like they're necessarily ready. She said you could definitely see an increase during that time.
That's one heck of a statistic. That's something that chew on. And while it's not completely unbelievable,
Mhm.
before I read Shola's comment, because it ties into the latter piece of what I was going to respond to what you said, Jasmine. What I thought about while you were sharing that, and I just didn't know that statistic. Like I said, it's not like it's unbelievable. Of course, it's very unfortunate. That's first and foremost. But then not being unbelievable. So while you were sharing it, it made me think of like, I bet just with these stats of just, most men and this, and you think of like just different scenarios, and just I always go back to just think of the society that we, live within, like just these hyperactive, overworked, overwhelmed, just up here. And where then it comes out of like, okay, well, let's present these different options and opportunities to help assist with. So let's come up with let's allow, let's give some grant money here, allow this person to come up with a program that, aids these, particular people, whether the men or the women or whomever. But instead of just saying, let's calm things down across the board. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's go as far as, a 4-day work week. I don't know, just something like it makes it so broad, because these stats
or even a therapy
alarming. Like they're so alarming. What do you say?
Even a therapy of requirement for employment.
Listen, y'all, I'm telling y'all, I know for sure, and this is me dropping a snippet, I know for sure that my nonprofit that I really, really look forward to more so in these days, I know that'll be a requirement for anyone that literally that either works and or volunteers there. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
Oh, is it still low? I hope not. Let me know if it's still low. But yeah, like I don't, it has to be like, it's things like that and moves like that. And I don't care with the fact that, yes, we're seeing, this fight about the mask mandate, the vaccine mandate. Then I'd rather have that fight of, mandating people to embark on or participate in, therapy and seeking professional mental help, and seeing as though all these statistics, speaking of stats again, that science shows that everybody that's breathing needs therapy. If you are breathing, you need therapy. Heck, I mean, they have therapy for animals. Like, you think somebody that, we're the ones that, thrive the society and just the world around us, and we keep everything pushing and keep everything afloat, and it's heavy on us, especially as Americans alone. Jeez, cut it out. So yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so just
even just with things that, are out of our control. All of us have experienced death.
Exactly. Everything's out of our control. As Americans, everything is almost out of our hands. I don't even want to say out of our reach, because that diminishes our hope, because I'm a hopeful person. I'll always be that. But it's just, I mean, realistically, it's like so many things as Americans are just out of our hands, out of our control. And we're just literally trying to grab onto something so slippery and trying to climb it. We're falling down. Like everything around us, like, help us out. Don't just throw me a bone. Actually help me out. And then to the point where, because so many of us experience so many shared traumas, and this is where I'll tie Shola's comment in, that so we have so many shared traumas that I don't just want help for myself. I want help for everybody around us, because it's something that she mentions here, she's breaking the cycle. So to share Shola's comment, she says, my grandmother was in an abusive relationship. I was a product of domestic violence, of a domestic violence situation, then ended up in a violent relationship myself. I am determined to break the cycle. That's exactly, I've literally felt that in my stomach reading that. That first and foremost, thank you for even sharing and being open about that, because here it is, that you're talking, what was that, 3 generations of trauma, of shared trauma, and who's to say, of how we come about and come across this information. it's not always, spilled and poured and shared with us openly. We usually kind of just find out by watch, by hear, and then by, again, by shared trauma and experience for ourselves. And so and then especially as us, the thriving generation now, the millennials, that it's on us. We know this, that is why things are just so much harder for us. It's on us to break these cycles, to break and break the chains on these generational curses, and just to break loose from them and to pave a brand new, a fresh path for ourselves, so that's another thing to remember, that it's for us too, but then to pave the way, for others, coming behind us. So, I mean, it is bonkers. And I want to just go back for a second of just some of the things that you mentioned, Jasmine, of the different, because actually it's funny, you're all up in my notes. It's so crazy. That, again, I just want to reiterate, because now I'm looking at my notes, I want to reiterate that women are not the only victims. And so my next note was about toxic versus abusive, and that of how I'm sure there's plenty to back that up, of where you said like toxic relationships with toxic traits. Excuse me. And I will say you definitely just snatched everybody's wig, but I'm going to reiterate the fact that you said everybody shares toxic traits. And if anybody goes back to watch it, I did like snicker, or like not snicker, but kind of like giggle at that moment, because it was like, oh, snatch my wig. Because I still remember not too long ago where it was this big deal on social media of people, posting and talking about my toxic trait is this, my toxic trait is that. And I would look at them like, really, because I didn't share the same toxic traits as everybody posted. Like, my toxic traits are as simple as like, simple, like, oh, you don't know I just pooed it, but I pooed it. Like, I like stuff like that. Or like, oh, you don't know that I just thought about I probably got pooped when I walked past you. I don't know, just things. I don't know. But so because I didn't have the same shared toxic traits, and watch where I'm going with this, that I then assumed that I don't have any, and that was far from the truth, right? And so it's more recently where I'm really coming to grips with my own toxic traits, of just things that I realize can be perceived as toxic to someone else, can be even triggering to someone else. Whereas, no, it may not necessarily be, my fault that this person is triggered, by something I said or did, right? It's not my fault that they are triggered, but it's still my responsibility to address the fact that they are triggered. If I, pick that up, especially if they acknowledge it and express it to me to say, hey, you doing that, or you saying that, or whatever, or you not doing that, it triggered me in a way that, and that's where conversation comes in. Everything does not have to jump to, you don't have to jump to a conclusion. Everything does not have to be, a battle. It doesn't have to be any back and forth. Healthy back and forth is fine. Like exchange, rather, not back and forth, but exchange, right? That's the difference between, a debate, an argument, and a simple dialogue and conversation. Y'all know I'm always going to push for us to talk. Everything deserves a conversation. I will never get away from that or around that. And you want to get to a place where this is where self-reflection, y'all know ain't no episode finna happen here on the BBX of BigSourceRadio.com, that I am not going to mention self-reflection. Cut it out. Every time you're going to hear it. It almost makes me think of like, I need something. What would happen? His name isn't Willy Wonka. What's his name, y'all? And you wore the suits. Pee Wee Herman. There we go. And it was the word of the day. Everybody went crazy. Like every time I say self-reflection, I'm gonna tell y'all do something wild. Like I need it to be embedded into not just your psyche, like not just your heart, not just your spirit, not just your soul, not just your belly, your feet, like just into your DNA. I need it flowing through your veins, that you consider self-reflection. And then to the point where you actually apply and practice often self-reflection. Like it's necessary. I just right before the show started, I shared I was looking for some posts that I wanted to post for the show promo. I promise that I'm going back to the notes. But I came across something else and I read that I loved it. Shout out to Mo. I know exactly who posted it. Oh my gosh, Monet. Love her, by the way. Y'all have no idea. Shout out to She Is Moses on IG. Y'all doing amazing work. The girl can sing. She's beautiful inside and out. Love her. And so she posted it. I don't know. I think it was actually a original post. Like I just remember screenshotting it because it was hilarious to me. And it said, sometimes I talk to myself and both of us laugh. Like listen, that y'all know everything's deeper for me. So first of all, I laugh because that's really me. Like, and when I shared it, not to put out here, but Jasmine, she agreed with me, right? And she said that, like, I love that she added to it. She was like, that's in private or public. Like, well, if there's people around or not, right? And I was like, yeah, like I legit cracked myself up. Like, and so even that is a part of self-reflection. Don't think it always has to be so boring and so heavy and so harsh and so, bring you down. Self-reflection is not meant to bring you down, baby. It's not meant to do that. If anything, it is really to help uplift you and empower you for yourself to be able to, y'all want to claim to be your worst critic so bad. It's not for you. We had a show about this. It's not about you being your worst critic. It's just about you being able to critique yourself in a healthy way. So you having a good dialogue with yourself, practice that so that you're able to have healthy dialogues with other people. I'm going to pin this right here, and then I promise I'm going back to my notes. I'm going to tell you why it's healthy to be able to have, or why you have to do the work and eat in order to get to a place where you can have healthy dialogue with others. Because, and I think I mentioned on the show, if not, it was right before the show started, but I mentioned something along the lines of like, y'all, still that online dating app thing. I just be on, I want to talk about it. I don't necessarily take it seriously, truthfully, but I do. This is one of the waves where I found myself kind of like back on it of just like saying or whatever and just like killing time as if I had that time to kill. Moving on. Because I legit stay busy. I love it and I appreciate it, but oh Lord. So in my downtime, right? My minuscule amount of downtime. Anyway, but so more earlier, I'm seeing like these responses from this one particular guy. Like I think he's from lately now. I'm seeing all these people from like out in like they're in Pennsylvania, Philly, Virginia, Delaware, I think New York, just away. And so here's one. I guess he either lives in Philly or is from Philly or something like that. But either way, so in Philly, he's just like, hey, and see, I used to be the person. I love the idea of like, let's just go to, Philly for lunch or just go to Delaware, but back when I was like drinking something like just for a drink or something, like just go, or yeah, just go to Virginia for breakfast. Like I used to love that idea. And I say used to, because I definitely haven't even thought of that. Definitely haven't done that in a long time. Yeah, very long time. Never think about it. Anywho, so he mentioned that like, hey, come see and just follow me. I promise. I'm gonna go off the grid for just a second. Go off, and I'm veering back over. And so y'all, ooh, my eye. What happened? Oh yeah. So he mentions like, hey, maybe come to like Philly, for some wine or something. Like I'm long overdue for like, a wine something. I didn't say it a wine date, but just a wine and convo or wine and dialogue kind of, vibe or something. Well, it's not bad. So I just want to respond to like, don't threaten me with a good time. Now, that was all fine and dandy. It gets to this point. He winds up saying something. I read the message, so I made a mistake, misread the message that I thought he said I'm off Friday, right? So I was thinking like, oh, I'll have my baby sister then, like I'm not going to do that, like what I have her for the weekend, she and my daughter, like they're gonna have good time. And so, but the message actually read I'm off today, right? So I think that was probably yesterday. I think. Long story short, we're going. Like I was still going on with the thought of thinking he said Friday, still not rereading the message. Clearly it was when I was doing too much, like whatever. And so understanding once I got to realizing why he's confused and all that, because first I was getting smart, like, what are you confused for? So I remember him wind up saying one of his messages was, you playing games and I was like, you read and comprehend or like, oops. But once I realized my mistake, I apologize, right? That's the big piece. And so why I said to be able to have healthy conversation with people, that includes to be able to accept or to receive and accept and respect somebody's apology, even with, because at some point earlier, like we now have like some words like nothing like crazy, but just still, just that it's like, so you can't just accept apology and like move on, because now once I've realized that you're saying that day I had stuff to do. So yeah, it was yesterday. Because I was going to a play. Shout out to y'all. Side note to the side note. This is probably why my producer hates when I don't have a guest, because I just ramble on. But I enjoy it. It's good for me. But side note to the side note, real quick. Shout out to Rock City Church. I went to the play yesterday about eternity. Really good message. A little loud. Definitely a little loud, but very good. And it's free. So just if anybody's interested, it would have been tonight. So tomorrow, I believe, is the last showing. But if you are interested in want tickets, I definitely have them. Please reach out to me. I will even drop them off. Like it's definitely worth it. But so back to the point of that, with this guy, right? So he, hey, Jess, guess who's busy?
Sorry, my phone died.
Oh, that's okay. I figured something. I thought it was like a call or something. I'm like, girl, handle the business. Listen. But I'm glad you're okay though. And so I was just mentioning, like, I had this side note because I was actually, it's perfect timing actually, because I reared off from, I was like touching on like just my notes to like what you said earlier, but I went on a tangent talking about of just why it's healthy to, when I made earlier, like right before the show started, I made the mention of, read the thing of like, sometimes I talk to myself and we both laugh. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned of just when you said like, yeah, that's private and public, like brown people or not. And I was just saying, like, I chimed in and just talking about why it's so important to have that practice to be able to then have healthy dialogue with other people, because you have with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And to be how a lot of people will claim to be like, I'm my worst critic and all that, but do that in a more healthy way, right? And so I was sharing like with this guy that I met online, and so he's in Philly, and he like, in a sense, like invited me to come out to Philly like for a wine and dialogue kind of like Philly, whatever.
So fun.
That's what I thought, right? So I responded, right? I responded saying like, don't threaten me with a good time. What I messed up on is I misread where he said he was off that day. I misread it as he's off Friday, knowing that I'll have my baby sister and of course like Sydney, like they have like play day like all week and all that. So I went along with that, and then it wasn't like some well timed into the convo, like me trying to figure out why he's confused, then me rereading the message, realizing I misread it. And so he had wound up saying something like, are you playing games? And I wound up saying like, can you read and comprehend? Or right. And so so I apologized. And so I was just, as you signed back on, I was just getting to the point of saying like, I realized like he's even unable to just to receive, accept, and respect like an apology and simply like move on from that.
Yeah.
So taking it as like, are we even reading the same thread? Like, this is crazy. This is so odd. This just might be an app to you, but some of us are actually out here trying to like find a real person, all that. It's like, okay.
Does he work for the state?
I don't think did I ask that? I don't know.
Wait, you said he lives in Philly?
Yeah.
That sounds like a situation I had, girl.
But it's plenty of them. That's the thing. That is so crazy. And so like with all of that, like it was just back and forth. And it was just, I literally, because at some point I wanted dismissing it, like not even in a rude way, but just literally was just like, okay, well, you know what? I understand. Hey, take care. Now he comes back with it, and then all you say is take care, no solution. Okay, so one, you don't know how to accept an apology. I don't know what solution you want from me anymore. Like I've explained to you, like I don't mind explaining stuff because I get that you don't know. That's the thing. Like people, is still this thing about like, I'm not going to explain this. I'm going to explain that. Like it's still that tug and war where people feel just the same way of, I don't have to tell you where I am, bruh, especially if we live in Baltimore, but just in the world we live in, it's very unsafe out here. So to check in with somebody, no matter how old you are, is a thing. That's for everybody.
Yeah.
Take and eat on that. And so all of that, it was just
like, say stuff like, oh, you act like you my girlfriend. I'm like,
right. So it's just like, well, listen, check in with somebody that doesn't make you feel that way. If it's your mama, your daddy, I don't really care. Just check in with somebody. And if it gets back to me, okay. And if not, I wish you well. So just all of that, like he was unable to even accept, like I said, the apology. And so it just makes it, so it takes me back into where I took that tangent, but it takes me back into just the different notes that I was taking of like when you were speaking, and then of, like I said, just them right along the lines of the notes that I had for tonight of one of, like I said, the toxicity, like kind of really feeding the domestic violence or domestic abuse, because really what that really speaks to is healing or the lack thereof. So an unhealed person, is someone that's probably more than likely not dealing with their stuff, their unhealed parts, their broken parts of them. And no, that does not, just to put this out there, that does not correlate with the unheard, unseen. Like it can, but it does not necessarily mean that. So for the folks that I am talking to, which I said is everyone, when I open the show and mention about the unseen, the unheard, the overlooked, the forgotten, that does not mean that I'm not calling you broken. Now, in self-reflection, again, the thing that we should coin here on the B-Mix, during self-reflection, that is for you to, come to the conclusion of if if that is what that means for you, but that's not necessarily what I'm saying, right? And so there's the toxicity that feeds into the domestic abuse, which I do agree with, usually because it goes along with the different types of abuse. So where you mentioned, I think you mentioned emotional early, no, mental, I'm sorry, mental, and then there's emotional, there's spiritual. Like you could just be a person, I don't care how this is about to sound to anyone. As an adult, you can be with or be entangled, be connected to, soul tied to, however you put it. And I leave it general like that because that could include friends, colleagues, community members, family, whomever. But you can be connected to someone that simply hurts your feelings. So much so often, so regularly that's the connection that's what you automatically tie to the connection with them. So immediately you could think of, oh, my friend Barbara, like as soon as you think of Barbara, you think of, she always hurt my feelings. She always say something that makes me sad. That is that's your identifier. What is your respective connection or bond or relational, relative identifier with people? Reevaluate all of that in your life. And yes, we're talking about domestic violence given, but it's really for you to identify to familiarize yourself with just the awareness and just the overall everything that goes into this, but also for you to reevaluate and to come up with your identifier. I know for sure my identifiers with the folks that are in my life now. Beforehand, I'll be honest, I never really even thought about it. Yeah. I never thought of the friends, the best friends that I had and all that. I didn't think about what the identifier was for the people that I was connected with and talked to on a regular basis, so.
And on top of that, to piggyback off of you, it's important to recognize who doesn't make you feel okay. Exactly. Work on it, talk about it, or talk through it, or get a therapist, because even just your frustrations and situations that you feel like you have no control over, and then you take that same energy that you're harboring, those emotions that you're harboring, and then you're in a committed relationship where most of us, kind of let our guard down. We're a little bit more of who we really are with the people that we are in relationships with, especially if it is a committed relationship. And so, those people tend to see a side of you that is more vulnerable, or you in not just good ways. So
right. That's good.
It might be good ways, but it might be bad ways, and it might be a thing where that person becomes your punching bag. Essentially, you might not feel like you have control in those other environments, and then you have this person who's right here, and you already know they pretty much down with you for the most part. And so you eventually may start to take out those emotions onto them, which is a part of the toxicity. On top of that, I think especially in the Black community, we have a lot of downloads that show us that toxic behaviors are okay. And so most of us, as much as people want to deny it or reject it or rebuke it and think that it's just up to the parents, media plays a big impact. And so you got movies, you got TV shows, you got music that all reference domestic violence in a casual way. Most of us tend to watch things or listen to things that we're not mature enough to listen to when we are first introduced to it. And so we internalize that however we see fit, and might think that, oh, okay, I could do this, or for a man or a woman in certain things. But when it actually comes down to it, in that actual relationship, those behaviors, whether it be a male displaying whatever he's displaying and a woman displaying whatever she's displaying, she could have got it from TV. She could have got it from music. One movie that I think everybody references is Baby Boy. And so that was like a really toxic relationship. And most people I know, especially in our younger years, we kind of were in toxic relationships, especially if you come from a broken home.
Yeah.
And then you come into a relationship, you know, experiencing all this love, but then also you might have witnessed domestic violence yourself as a child. And so that was how you learned that you should deal with these problems. And so whether man or female, because that just depends on where you come from. What family dynamic and all.
Absolutely.
So I think it can be a compilation of things.
Absolutely,
and I think that some people like to try to put it on one thing, but it could be so many factors, just like with anything else in life, you know, so many things compile together to make up someone's idea of what something should look like. And so
exactly. Again, why it's back to having that conversation with yourself and self-reflection. I keep feeling like that was about to fall, but to be able to see, because when is the last time that any of us have asked ourselves, because one, it's a two-part thing. So it's asking yourself what you think, and we talked about this on a show a while ago, of asking yourself of what you think other people see you as, or what do you think your identifier for other people is, right? And then how realistic is that? And then actually applying that or testing that and asking those around you and closest to you what their identifier for you is. And when, like, you have to actually practice and apply self-reflection in order to really just be aware. But we're so stuck in this place of, I don't really care what people think, when truthfully all of us do. I don't know why it seems in a lot of different circles where that has been brought up that I felt like such an outcast. Because I'll be like, well, I actually do care. Now, am I saying that it drives my life? No. But I do consider and often, you know, just consider just how I appear or how I'm perceived. You know, and it's just at least perceived. I'm not saying you're even concerned with how you're received, but at least how you're perceived. What do other people see and think of you? Because honestly, it plays a role somewhere. Somebody somewhere in some circle, you know, could be either bad-mouthing you or praising you, or it's a combination of both, and then it just helps you in the end. And like, it was something you said earlier that made me think of, one, is two things. So one, because it's going most recent and back. So one, it's funny that you even bring up the example of Baby Boy. And just, like you said, the idea of just in music and in movies and just so many other things, especially social media now, of just how it's praised or how it's watered down, or like you said, or so over dramatized to where it's like, that's unrealistic, ain't no way. So then it makes your response, it forces your response to be in a lesser way in which it should be perceived and received, and drawing what am I saying? Of bringing forth awareness. Like it literally reverses the response that should be, you know, to something so serious such as domestic violence. That is these conversations that we need to have and should have. And so I think about, like, with Baby Boy, bringing up the movie Baby Boy, again, giggling now just because, sorry y'all, I promise, not watering this down at all, but bringing up the movie Baby Boy, literally my longest relationship that I had, my most toxic, and I mean most toxic relationship that I had, that like we, at some point, like I remember it wasn't for the entire duration of our relationship, but at some point we referenced, you know, like, oh, you my Yvette, oh, you my Jody, like, no, what? And we were young, like we started dating when we were 16 and, you know, broke up when we were like 23 or something. Like, no, absolutely not. Should that not have been a part of a young girl's or even a young man's, you know, model, example. And so that's what it is. I'm glad I went to that, because it made me think of what I thought about when Jasmine was bringing up the movie, and just about guarding, or how I perceive it as like guarding what we hear, guarding what we see. And I know I've said this in recent shows, the past few weeks, I believe, at least sometime last month. And why, if you think about it, now follow me, just follow me, okay? How people should be careful of the fights and the debates that you gung-ho, like jump into and want to, drive. Just, yeah, I'm going to stick with this, religion is man-made and I ain't go. The crazy part is though, man-made or not, religion helps with, and I'm thinking at least the Christian, right? Christian religion. And I'm even thinking of others. Like I know there are I'm sure there are other religions, and because I don't want to be completely wrong, so I'm not even going to pinpoint. But I do know that there are other religions along with Christian that charge you to not charge physically or fiscally, right? Like not you have to pay money, but charge you as in tasking you and urging you to be more cautious and to be aware of what you listen to, what you see, right? What you watch, what you surround yourself with, right? Because if anything, it's helping you to build up self. So we're so gung-ho to push off, oh no, religion, oh no, oh no. If you decide not to believe in Jesus, that is your decision. I wish better for you, truthfully. But that still is your decision. It does not mean just because you don't agree with one, does not mean that you don't have to believe or agree with any of them. Because I told y'all before that I'm sure, like I'm mix me all around. Throw some Buddhists in there. I'm firm on Christianity, believe in Jesus Christ, all of that, right? But mix a few other practices in there because everybody got a little. It all comes from one anyway. We all praying to the same God. We call them something different, and then Christianity being the one true religion because the only way through God to God is through Jesus. But I get and respect. That's the thing. It's respect that each person has to come to that in their own, and that's okay, right? But the point being that something that stretches across almost all religions really is just that it is to help build you up and to give you to feed that sense of that human nature, sense of of belief. We have to believe in something. Again, even the atheists, their belief is the choice not to believe in our got it right, still their belief. And so with that being said, that just speaks to the fact that, like I said, in Christianity, and like I said, there are some others that charge you to be very cautious of what you see and what you hear and what you watch and because it'll feed what you do. You'll internalize it at some point. It addresses the psyche, right? And so even when we think about because of what it is that we watch and we listen to and how it's either watered down or over dramatized and forcing us to do the watering down of something such a serious topic as far as domestic violence and domestic abuse or just abuse overall, and all the different types, is like something else that Jasmine mentioned earlier of it was when she mentioned that in her experience that there was never hitting, right? And so it makes someone question like, well, can I even claim this as domestic violence? Can I even say? And not to touch on this too much, but just to bring, because there was another piece earlier that I wanted to compare, but I'll just step in here to compare with the fact that even when we think about for rape victims, something else that I can speak to, right? That depending on, or I don't want to say all, but I'm sure there are more than what we could imagine. Just most, I think I can safely conclude that most victims at some point, go through that questioning, process of like, can I claim this? Is that I know with one of my experiences because I knew the person, right? Knowing very well that it was not consented, knowing very well that I did not ask for it, I didn't lead it on, literally I was asleep, okay? And so you just go through a place of questioning, like, well, can I even consider this to be, like, can I, right? And so even with domestic violence, you can go through, and I'm sure any abuse, any trauma, you go through a period of questioning it and doubting yourself. Hence why I really push for self-reflection, because even for something that I push for us to practice in our most healthy state, or where we consider to be most healthy, is good practice for when we go through things, right? When we experience trauma, when we experience shortcomings, downfalls, whatever, or even heightened accomplishments. Because if we think of just depression for a second, which is, we'll probably get into next week, which also is October is National Depression Awareness Month. And so just that people, not people, sorry, what was I about to say? Dang it. just even with that, like when as far there we go with like I said, heightened, it could be trauma, so just bad things that happen to you, but also could be heightened accomplishments as well, right? And so when we think of just even depression, right, that depression, they talk about just, do you have very low lows and very high highs, like that it's supposed to be, balanced. So again, shout out to the Libras. It's supposed to be, balance. It's about the life is about finding the happy medium, and just trying to balance out, the different things that come your way in life. And so why I push for self-reflection, because that is like the consistency that we all really want to strive toward, because it helps us. And so when Jasmine, right before you got back on, I was just touching on the area of where you had mentioned with your experience of that it was never any hitting. And so I kind of added to that a bit of just where people could question of, well, can I even consider this abuse? Can I consider this domestic violence? And the answer, I don't even know if I made it very clear, is yes. Yes, you can, because it goes back to something else we already talked about, that there are different types of abuse. There's spiritual, somebody broke your spirit, they're fighting with you. And I mean, that could be someone that is spiritual and religious or not. Still, we all have a living spirit within us. So either way, somebody can hurt you spiritually. They talk about domestic abusers try to control, financially. So we can talk about financial, abuse. We talk about mental abuse, emotional abuse, and then there's also physical abuse. And we talked about earlier, Jasmine, you said a compilation of some things. There's that too. Like at some point, it's probably a combo, because whereas I think a bit ago you mentioned that you said it's more of, or yeah, I think that's how you put it. You said it's more of mental health and mental health, Lord, mental abuse. Simply because
it is a mental health problem too.
Well, right, exactly, right. But I was trying to quote you correctly. That's why I chuckled. But just the fact that it starts there. That's the thing, because right to what you said, it's a mental health problem, something that needs to be addressed with a mental health professional. Right, simply because
and it stems from insecurities.
How about that? That's all. It's all wrapped in. So there are literally.
That's why they tend to not want you to, right, and they tend to not want you to be around other people as much.
Right.
And so they always fear basically that they're gonna lose you. Mm-hmm. So they kind of operate in a way that they kind of scare you to stay.
See, that speaks to the cycles
and force you to, and want you to do everything that they want, how they want it to be done. And if it doesn't get done that way, then it could be a problem.
Right. And see, and that's a way, and that's not exactly, but that's a good example of, because that's exactly what it could look like for some people, and probably I'll say some. I won't even jump to say most, because I don't know, like, of course, not everybody's experience, but it's definitely enough. It's an example of enough amount of people, or situations out here for people to be able to know that it needs to be addressed and need to be made more aware of that, because it makes me think of just the different cycles of abuse. Like there are cycles. At some point, they make you feel more comfortable. At some point, they, may water down your experience or your feelings, and then again, making you then question your own, like, well, am I even in this? Like, whereas on social media right now, there's this trend of the red flag thing. And I always talk about the fact that there are times where, this is why I'm always triggered, even before it was my experience. People, just one example, would always try to bash about like single mothers and say, well, you chose them. Why you just lay down with that person? While we could spend a whole show just addressing that, but I'm triggered by just when people make these huge jumps out here against somebody else's experience, simply because honestly, at some point, for all these red flags that people are talking about, at some point you didn't even know that was a red flag. That was just your experience. Mm-hmm. And so you didn't know that this was something like, oh, this isn't supposed to, it was normal for you. I will always share that it wasn't until the first time just not the very first session, but just the first therapist that I had as an adult, that I shared with her and just like kind of walking through, some stuff from family and just talking about it. Like once I finally felt like opening up and just saying, and for her to blatantly say like, that's not normal. And it was like, it literally took her to say those words. And I'm like, what? Really? What do you me? Like, and then that's what helped me to open my eyes. Like, that's not no, everybody wasn't going through this. So like, that's the same thing as far as when people are experiencing red flags. Well, unfortunately, when people are experiencing abuse in any shape, way, or form, that you may not identify that as, you know, whatever that is, red flag, narcissistic, abuse, trauma. Like, we literally, if you think about it, all of us are able to, or all of us that are able to speak to our traumas, we're speaking to them in the past tense. I don't know many conversations, and when I dream of the world and one day of how we'll get, is that I will want somebody to be able to talk about their stuff in the moment. Hey, I am experiencing trauma. I am experiencing abuse. Usually it's, yep, this happened to me. Yep, I saw this or that, and so we have, once we get to a place of where we can be proactive about it. Usually everything is in retrospect. And so I know something else we talked about when we were talking the other day, that along the lines of questioning, like, can I say that this is abuse? Can I claim this? Can I claim to be a victim? Like, we're looking for validation to even be a victim. Here it just came to me. Thank you, Lord. Here's your B tip of the week. You do not have to be validated as a victim. If you suspect that you are victimized in any way, then that is what you are. Now, it is about how you address it, right? And what is best for you in your healing journey. But you don't have to ask anybody. You don't need anybody to validate for you if you are a victim. If you are experiencing, because it looks different. So even like Jasmine, like shared like some example, there are millions of different examples of what it looks like. I'll speak to just real quick, I promise, of that when earlier, Jasmine, when you said like it, how did you put it? I think you said like it wasn't every day, or just, it started off, that's what it was.
It was never every day, but it was enough that it was
like it took a while or something, right? Yeah. I remember you said something about the gap, and that was it made me think of that. I was like, that was exactly what made me question. Like, it took quite a few times for it to happen. I'd be like, oh shoot, was I a domestic abuse, a victim of domestic violence? There's no way. That's crazy. Even with, literally of having to go to court, having to go to hospital, like of hearing and having documentation of this being written up as a domestic violence call, a domestic violence, that like it still hadn't clicked for me.
I think too, it's a bit of shame that comes with it as well, because it almost, it can make you feel like you weren't smart enough to recognize it, or smart enough to remove yourself from the situation prior to, or still loving that person and caring about that person regardless of what they may have done to you. And so then telling people, or even just saying it or admitting it, can be, a challenge.
Absolutely.
Depending on the person. I just so happen to be a person who likes being vulnerable. So
gotcha.
I'm not really sure what it is, because I've definitely been told you share too much. But for me, it's always been a thing where I know other people are having this experience. Exactly. And the number one thing across all of the experiences that I have experienced, I always in those moments felt alone. And so I share those experiences because I absolutely don't know what's going on with other people. And all the experiences that I share, even with just the self-love and how I'm so vulnerable about that, and the things that caused me to take those steps, and including the abusive relationship, which absolutely was the start of, or that led to the self-love journey, I'll say, before I knew it was a self-love journey. So I think that it's really easy to think that you, it's hard to admit a lot of different things about yourself, And so I think that that's one of the reasons why I like to be vulnerable, because it gives people permission to accept those things, or admit that they also experience those things without being shamed. Absolutely. And so most of us, I told you before, I call it experience shaming, but where people experience certain things and they don't talk about it because they've heard chatter of other people making fun of other people who experience those same things. And so then it becomes a thing where it's like, now you're bottling it all up. And not to say that you have to discuss anything that you deal with anybody. You can absolutely just go to a therapist. But sometimes you won't even make those steps if you don't even realize it's something that you need to do something about.
That's good.
And
that's so good.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And it makes me think about just something that we share alike that is some wording that I've been like playing around with in my head. Because first I wanted to say live, but what it really is for me, it's we life out loud, or some people live out loud, others laugh out loud, but we life out loud, and just we're not the same because some of us are really set apart to be that I don't even want to say ultimate, but I guess like just this extra amount of vulnerability, right? To give that to lead way, just to make other people feel more comfortable, because it is those people of any circle, like there's gonna be a snooty person there. It's just like, oh no, I can't, I would never share that. But yet we might be at a women's circle where that's what we're supposed to do. But so now here I am, I just feel led and just easily by myself able to open up to break that ice and to hopefully, create that space before that was even a phrase. And so I absolutely get that, because the same way, like why I always kind of take to, quote unquote, the underdog, or just the person that seems like, the unseen, the uncertain, all of that, right? That's always been like just my inner ministry. And then it's because it's like, let me just be just who I am, just open, because I know, like you said, that when I dealt with it, whatever it is, that I felt alone, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way. And so in order for you not to feel that way, you need to feel like somebody else is there. So even in a circle where everybody could be laughing, or making fun of this one particular situation, and there's somebody in that circle, like you said, that's afraid to speak up because the consensus of that group at that moment is, who would say that, who would do that, and it's like, well, actually plenty of people. And so where I can insert myself and my own experience to make people feel a little more comfortable. Absolutely. Like, even though, and I say, even with the B tip of the week is that you don't need anyone to validate you, validate your victim status. That, you also, just have to find that stride, in yourself. That it just goes right back to that of just, and I lost my other wording. I'd lost my train of thought of exactly what I was about to say, but it was just along those lines of that, you're
the strength. On that strength.
And that's it. That's exactly. It was something you said earlier. That when you were talking about vulnerability too, that it made me think of, I said, it just, you're strengthened. Like you said, I think you said empower some, but it's like you're strengthened to be that vulnerable, in order to strengthen others. So really, if anything, anybody, like something of what we share is like used as a conduit, like just to exude. That's it. Like your second B tip of the week, y'all. Your vulnerability exudes your strength. That's for you. Out there.
I love that.
That's for you out there. Your vulnerability exudes your strength. And I mean that. I mean that wholeheartedly, because it comes from a deep-rooted place that it empowers your own self. Because if anything, when you share a word, when you empower somebody else, when you strengthen someone else, when you love on someone else, that's the crazy part. That's the piece that we leave out. But when you do anything else, just like a preacher, right? A preacher that preaches a word, it is supposed to, truth be told, it's supposed to hit them first. Like it's supposed to move in their life, first, as then they are used to be, that messenger to share that gospel, whatever it is. So it's for those of us that give empowering words, all of that is supposed to move and touch you first, in order for you to actually walk in what it is that you're, talking or pushing, right? And so with that being said, like I said, the last part, that little piece that we never really connect, that where it's supposed to hit us first, is love. Why? Not to shame us by any means, but to bring light to the fact that it should not be such a hard of a push to get us to love ourselves. No one really should have to tell you that, but that's something for our world to move toward. So we're just dealing with how we are now, that there are plenty of, Queen Me, of Queen Melanin, of, like, I mean, what I call you, the self-love, self-care queen out here to really
one
help
of
and
the
push.
things too, I wanted to say, the world really sends a message that, as a whole, with so many different downloads, that we shouldn't love ourselves. And so that's how so many of us get caught in this mindset of not being okay with our body, or not liking the way certain things on us look, especially physically. And so when you already show up not feeling like you look the best that you could, it immediately attacks anything else that you now, nobody wants to hear what I have to say because of what I look like. Right. And so then you begin to think that your contribution doesn't matter, your thoughts doesn't matter, you don't matter. And so that's one of the reasons why the self-reflection is important, and going back to look at how you look at things. And then the self-love is the taking the steps to make sure that you are nurturing your spirit and your everything. And so you can't move effectively if you're not happy with yourself. And so essentially you want to find inner peace. And so that way you are more aware of what you're allowing people, or how you're allowing people to treat you, and how you're allowing yourself to be treated, period. Well, I repeated it.
No, right. How you get people to treat you, and I mean.
And so I saw something recently that says self-love, people love you how you love yourself. And so what does that look like? If you always putting yourself on the back burner, people constantly going to come to you and try to take your time away from you, because they already know, oh yeah, this person makes themselves available all the time. This person will give me money all the time. And so if it's something that you truly know that you're not wanting to do, and you're doing it because you're thinking of that other person before yourself, then that is not self-love. So self-love is thinking about yourself the way you would think about somebody else outside of yourself that you love.
Absolutely. And it's totally okay to think of yourself first. Again, it's about the balance. So like I've said before, it's not about, of course, we know it's not about being selfless, but it's also not being selfish, right? It's real, like you can be it should be better. I know we take it as a compliment to say like, oh, this person's so selfless. Actually, the healthy way would be this person is more selfless. And even if it's just left there, but that alludes to the fact that they're more selfless than selfish. That means that you're somewhere closer in the middle of those two, right? Because some of us, and I'm definitely speaking for myself, that sometimes I have to lean to someone that I've known or like encountered that was a selfish person. It's like, I literally used to say, I don't understand how people can be so selfish. Like, but there are plenty of people out here that are just selfish. And so respect to them, because that takes energy and it takes something too to just decide to be like, nope, all about self. But that's still not the healthy way. It is finding the balance. So just piggybacking off of what Jasmine said, that it is totally okay to think of self first. I told y'all my opinion, my perspective of the hierarchy is God, yourself, and then everything else. And you put that in line there. I mean, of course, it takes a different turn, but it really starts with that foundation is your higher being, your who you believe in, your divine power, and then you, right? Because you are you are nothing to anyone else if you're nothing to yourself first. You're nothing to no one else. Truthfully, we used to take pride in that, and I love that there's this movement now of just getting us away from that. Is I pour myself into my children, to my parents, to my family, to my this, my that. Sure, but that's still not the right way to do it. That's why that's why you feel overworked. That's why you feel overwhelmed. That's why you feel too tired. That's how you make yourself easily susceptible to, depression, to, triggers. I mean, just things like I said, we're getting into depression next week because again, October is also is National Depression Awareness Month. And so to get into that, because really one of the last notes that I had just touching on domestic violence is about abuse, and does it correlate with depression and how. So I want to get into just experiences that we may have even shared tonight, or just even different ones of next week of, and anyone else feel free to check back in and to chime in about if any experience that you have had, and that's more broad than just domestic violence, for anyone that's, watching that does not relate to that, which I'm truly happy about that if you do not relate to that, because anything I've ever experienced, I don't want anyone to deal with. And I'm so saddened by that. There's so many other people here that have experienced some of the worst things that I have. But even if not, so for next week, it's just for any experience that you've had, especially if it pertains to abuse in any way, shape, or form, and how that may have connected or have driven depression, if you've had experience with that. And so we'll get into that next week. But before we get out of here in just a minute, I want to say this, especially because of what Jasmine shared earlier, that stat that really is just on me heavy, about domestic violence increases during pregnancy. That is a very heavy statistic to soak in, truthfully. But that feeds right into what I wanted to make sure we close the show out with tonight, is that for anyone that suspects anyone else, so for any one of you out there, and either you are experiencing, but especially if you experience it or not, and you suspect that someone else that you love and care about and is close enough with, that you suspect that they are experiencing domestic violence in any way, shape, or form, the number one thing, the piece of advice that I will give, is that you need to, especially if you are led, right? So this is for the people that feel led to do something, is that to put yourself in a place and to make it very clear with that person in the best way possible that they receive it, that they understand that whenever they may be ready to talk or to open up, that you are there, that you are a person that they can actually speak with and talk to. Doesn't mean to force any ideas, anything else on them. And then if you feel as though that you are not close enough and have that bond, that healthy bond with that person, that you can say that, then begin by creating that space first and then share that with them, is all I'm saying. That is, I guess, your third B-tip of the week before we get out of here. I want to thank Jasmine. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you.
I appreciate you so much. And for all of you out there, we love you. I mean it. Until next time.
Bye.